What's up, everybody? Unrested here. I'm back again, just kind of in a new little park here. I'm close to the train station though, so please excuse if there's a little bit of beeping from the gates going down in between the different shots that we're having here for the video today, which is a top 10 countdown. In no particular order, a viewer requested that I do my top 10 games, and I just realized I did not write down number 10 right now, which I'm going and doing. And it's done. My list is completed. And I'm just going to go... Oh, and by the way, the top 10 have to be Japanese games, made in Japan. Not necessarily about Japan, because I don't know how many games are actually about Japan specifically. I do have one in here, which I'll tell you later which one is specifically about Japan. But I'll go ahead and mark that down right now. That's what I did. Okay. Let's begin. These are in no specific order, because really, I mean, how do you... These games are in different genres, they're different stories, they're different settings. I can't really rank them by that. I guess if I were to go into like specifically survival horror, I could get into that, because then I could rate it by like fear factor and stuff like that. But these have such different things to rate them by, I can't really put them in any order. So please just realize they're all at the top of my list, but I'm just doing 10. And let's just begin with number 1. Up, see, there's the beeping from the train. I hope that's not too invasive to our video today. If it is, oh well. Number 1, Earthbound, also known as Mother. Earthbound is a very wacky RPG that starts off in a modern-day setting, and that's what first drew me to it. It was actually something I played in a very strange way. Many of you may not know this, but back during the time of the Sega Dreamcast, you could actually do an emulator for it and download a bunch of games that way. Earthbound was long to a point where it wasn't being sold retro, but it wasn't being sold as a new game in stores either, so it was very hard to find and purchase unless you knew a friend who had it and you could borrow it from. That being said, what I did was actually have my roommate at the time tell me about the game, and when he asked, had I ever played it, and I was like, what is that game? I've never heard of it. And he's like, I can't believe you've never played Earthbound. He downloaded it right away, put it into my Dreamcast, and said, you need to go ahead and just start playing it right now. And I did, and I was just like, wow, how did I ever miss out on this game? It's amazing. I love the modern RPG setting, something I had never played before. I love the fact that you could relate to the main character, who was just a young boy. Obviously, I have been a young boy at one point in my life. Now I am an old man. But, I mean, just so many aspects of it. And I thought the most progressive part of it was that it doesn't really end on a happy note. I don't really want to spoil the ending for you. Well, you know what? I will. I'm kind of spoil it if you haven't played it yet. It's an ancient game, so at this point, if you haven't played it, if you haven't listened about it, if you haven't watched, you should. You end up putting your soul into a robot, because it's the only way you can travel to this planet whose atmosphere is completely toxic to a human. And you do this to be able to defeat the final boss. But at the end of it, you find out you can't actually get your soul back into your normal body, and you're stuck in this like metal shell, which you can't go back to your family, you can't go back to your normal life. You're stuck in this kind of metallic limbo, and it's not a very happy ending. On top of that, the final boss you fight is the story based around a lot of creepypastas, Gaius. And it's a pretty creepy little story. If you figure out how the guy who created the game, he made this very creepy character to relate to an incident in his life where he had accidentally walked into sort of a splatterpunk gore film accidentally as a young kid called The Decapitated Beauty, I believe it was called, in which some policeman rapes the corpse of a dead woman. He accidentally walked into this when he was a little kid, absolutely traumatized him, and he wanted to make the player feel the same kind of fear that he did when he was a little kid. Pretty epic when you think about that. Number 2, Deadly Premonition. Many people might not know this, but the company that makes Deadly Premonition, I think they're called Access Games, if I'm correct, is located here in Osaka, where I live. I've actually typed emails to the creator of the game, just talked to him a little bit. He actually even looked at my portfolio one time and said in the future, if they ever needed my artistic skills, that they'll call on me, which I mostly believe he was just being nice. But I mean, the fact that he even gave me the time of day to go ahead and do that is pretty awesome. Deadly Premonition speaks to me in so many ways. It's a dark, surrealistic game based a lot on the Twin Peaks series. If you've never watched Agent Dale Cooper and followed his character through the Twin Peaks 1990s series, I highly suggest you go do it. It is an incredible series by David Lynch, very dark, surrealistic, murder investigation with incredibly interesting characters. The same goes for this game. Every character in this game, and it's an open world game like GTA, but it's also a murder mystery, it's also a survival horror, it's also a dark surrealistic look into the darkness of the human soul. It's so many things, and there's so many plot twists, and on top of it, the story and the plot twists are not cheesy. It's not like Heavy Rain where you follow the story and there is a plot twist at the end, but you're kind of like, oh, really? Well, that puts a lot of holes in the story now. That doesn't happen with this. You actually are quite surprised when you find the ending, and quite pleasantly surprised at that, and very happy with it. It is set in modern day once again, 1980s, 1990s, kind of rural America, small town America. Everything about the city that you investigate everything in is a small town atmosphere, such as things like milk deliveries. You got like your small little grocery stores. Fishing and hunting are like the big popular scenes there. And you're this modern day kind of, I don't know if the main guy's from New York City or some big city. He's a big city cop, or I should say detective really, stuck in a small city setting, and you know, kind of just chewing the scenery the whole time his character investigates this very extremely interesting character. There's so many small secrets hidden in between there that a lot of people don't even notice. I've played the game so many times that even one of the small things that I noticed was that there is a character in the game whose name starts with every letter of the alphabet. So you have from a character from A all the way to Z, and every letter in between exists in that game. And so there's a lot to explore, a lot of people to meet. There's people who don't even have to do with the main plot, who you just enjoy talking to because they progress the story along and just have so much character written into them. A very, very passionately made game. Next up, we've got Xenosaga. God, Xenosaga, how do you even begin to describe this game? It's kind of a mix between sci-fi and Final Fantasy. It's an RPG, and I think the thing that got to me the most about it, that I enjoyed the most, was its exploration into philosophy, religion, people's codes, creeds, way of life, the battle between believers and non-believers of a fake, of course, religion. They're not going to use real ones because that'd be far too controversial. But even at the time, the fact that this got into kind of a fight against religion was very controversial. Again, another great RPG from Japan. And oh, I should note, it apparently is going to have a remake very soon for the new 3DS, which I myself was saying that I'm never going to buy a new 3DS. This may cause me to buy it. I may have to play this game again. Next up, we got the Silent Hill series. I don't want to call out any one such game, but if I were, my all-time favorite Silent Hill game is number 3. I know some people are going to hate me for saying this, but after America took over Silent Hill series, I thought it sucked. I don't like being this strong-arm ex-soldier, ex-prisoner who has all these fighting powers. I liked more of the gun and run, the kind of constantly having to feel your heart beat in your chest as you run away from enemies way too powerful for you. That was far more exciting than being able to carry around automatic weapons and easily, you know, take down giant monsters. I enjoyed the older game, Silent Hill 3 being my all-time favorite. I really just like the fact that Claire, who I believe is the name of the main character in that game, was just a young girl trapped in a mall, trying to escape while outrunning monsters far larger than herself. That brought the most fear to me in that game, and I feel like if you're gonna go for survival horror, the ultimate point of the game should be to feel fear, to have that person playing the game feel their heart pumping in their chest, to, you know, be wishing to always run from whatever's coming after them, to constantly have them on edge. And Silent Hill, the first 3 games, I feel really did that well. Probably number 2 and number 3 are my all-time favorite. But number 3, I'd say, stands out from the rest, in my personal opinion. Of course, this is only my opinion. You are welcome to like even the games made in America. I don't care. Number 5, Fatal Frame, also known as Project Zero. There was also a Game Boy, well, not Game Boy, I want to call it Game Boy, DS, Nintendo DS, game called Spirit Camera. Which I actually really enjoyed Spirit Camera. My only complaint with Spirit Camera was that, number 1, you had to use a book to play it. You had to actually use the manual that it came with to play it. And the whole point of the DS is that it's mobile. You can take it out of your house and play it on the train. One of the most done things in Japan as far as game systems are concerned, people playing them on the train, even see grandma playing them on the train. And having to use that book and look around with the camera aspect kind of made it odd to play on the train. Some people might have thought I was crazy. But the other Project Zero, especially Project Zero 2 or Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly, to this day stands as one of the all-time scariest games I have ever played. I actually have not completed Fatal Frame 2 because of how scary it was. I have a friend in the Unrest team, Kyle, who says that when he finally gets to Japan, we will be buying that game and playing it all the way through. It is our main goal as far as video games are concerned in unison. We must beat Fatal Frame 2 and get through the fear that it drives into you. I think the scariest aspects are the ghosts in that game, the fact that they constantly repeat their tortured words, that their voices are obfuscated behind this filter of this distortion and dark groaning, the ways in which they've died and that their bodies are contorted into these mangled messes. Absolutely creepy. Moving on to our next one, number 6, Twilight Syndrome, a game probably very few of you have ever heard of. Twilight Syndrome, I believe, only had a Japanese make. There was no English version of it. It is a DS game, a Nintendo DS game. A very small title that was based around Japanese urban legends. You are a group of high school students who has formed a club that investigates urban legends around Japan. You go and investigate everything from the Locker Baby urban legend to Akamanto. If you don't know what those stories are about, I highly recommend, if you enjoy horror or scary stories, look up Locker Baby, look up Akamanto, look up Kuchisake Onna. Check out some of those. Those are all in the game. They're super creepy. You go around with just a flashlight. It's only done in 2D side scroller where you're moving back and forth with this flashlight, and still intensely creepy. Next up we've got Shenmue. This is the actual series that was based in Japan, 1980s Japan, made by the creator of Virtual Fighter. It sold horribly in America and was supposed to have multiple series. I had heard everything from up to 7 different parts to 13 different parts were supposed to be made. It only got made till part 2. I played both parts, beat them all the way through, collected every damn thing you could in the game. You play Ryu and walk through a small town in which your father was killed by I don't know what you would call him. He was this Chinese martial artist who comes and kills your father to take half of an amulet that controls a lot of power, and he wants it. And you are completely revolving your mission around honing your karate skills to one day eventually confront the man who killed your father and take him on. And during that time you have to investigate different things that lead to finding the killer of your father, his henchmen, killing some of them along the way as well, battling them, but at the same time doing sometimes menial tasks that turn out to be incredibly fun. For example, just driving around a forklift because you need to have a job to earn money. Everything down to finding food for an abandoned kitten in your neighborhood, meeting people at certain times to learn a little bit about their life at bars or karaoke places. Just super interesting game, super interesting characters. Again, another game where so much effort was put into the characters that you just fall in love with the town and the characters that inhabit it. It was an open world game that was way ahead of its time, way before even like GTA existed. It was open world. You could walk around. There was a set time in which you actually had to check which time to meet people during the day. Incredibly ahead of its time game. Amazing to play. Next up is another survival horror. As you can imagine, I have a lot on here. Siren, the new translation. Used to only be sold on the PSN network. Now I believe you can still buy it for the PS3 on disc, of course, and it is a super creepy game. My only complaint about it would be the fact that its story is very hard to understand. To this day, I have watched, I've beaten the game, I've gone all the way through it, I've watched playthroughs of the game, I've watched every single cutscene of the game again and again. I have a lot of trouble trying to make out what this story is. It's pretty much something like a woman trying to release an evil god into the world, and you take on the role of multiple characters trying to stop this from happening. But that's not the point. The point is that the fear it induces in you is just incredible. There's one point where you play multiple characters through it, and one of them is this little girl stuck in an abandoned hospital that is being roamed by these sort of half-zombie, half-sentient nurses who have long since died but live out their normal everyday tasks in this hospital and continue to patrol the hallways. And you have no weapons. You have no way of fighting them at all. Nothing. You can't do anything to stop them. All you can do is hide. And the second they find you is instant death. So it is incredibly scary. You're hearing, this little girl try to hide into small cabinets and closets, and you start to, feel heavy breath as the monsters get closer and closer. On top of it, you have other parts that you play. There's one really creepy one where you go to this old abandoned apartment out in the middle of this now flooded area where this dead family is just living out their everyday lives in this sort of rotting zombie form. The dad's staring blankly at this, fuzzy snow TV, while him and his dead daughter laugh at a show that's not even actually playing. It's very creepy. The atmosphere is incredibly creepy. Some of the monsters too. There's one where it's like this deformed caterpillar guy who looks like a stack of bodies, and he's just incredibly gigantic and hideous, and you have to fight him. You're shooting him with a shotgun. Incredibly intense and scary. Next up, we've got another RPG, JRPG, Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is a game, it's just one of those games that's really touching, where once again you fall in love with the characters and the story and sort of everything and anything they do. You follow these characters through time, as the whole vision of the game is putting an RPG that travels through all different time periods to stop a giant boss known as Lavos, who is this sort of lava monster that inhabits the world and is going to bust out of the world and take it over and destroy everything. You go everything from sci-fi futuristic with a robot companion to all the way back to the caveman ages, where you meet dinosaurs and a cave woman that joins your party. So many different and diverse characters, medieval settings, magical settings, even a relation to the story of the persecution of Christ and finding the Judas in the crowd. And it's such a deep and invigorating game with the characters that you fall in love with. It has 15 different endings. You can play it through, and now with the new DS version, you can play it through, start a new game, and start again with all the same weapons that you have, and earn experience again to get even stronger, beat it at different points in the game, and have a different ending. There's even a point where you can actually find a secret ending where all the creators of the game are gathered with you in a room and talk to you about congratulating you for beating the game. They put so much effort into this. To know that they had made a game so good that they put multiple different endings that would allow the person to play it through again and again really shows a team that put a lot of passion. On top of it, the music is addictive. It's that old school MIDI music, but it's beautiful. You should check out Chrono Trigger's soundtrack if you can as well. It did have a sequel called Chrono Cross. Not quite as good. I didn't really get into that game. Last but not least, our number 10 game is Hotel Dusk, another game that very few people have actually heard of, although it did have its English version. A very little strange game. I don't want to give too much away because at the very least you can watch a playthrough on YouTube. You are I believe a cleaning goods salesman who is an ex-detective who had sort of a falling out with his police bureau and is now kind of this pariah cop who's doing a little bit of investigation on his own time. He stops at a hotel called the Hotel Dusk and learns of its kind of shady past, its strange characters, and some mysteries going on there while he's staying at the hotel, and it's mostly a dialogue-driven game. There's a few little search and puzzle quests, but it's mostly you interacting with the characters within this hotel, learning their backstories, which are beautiful and very well written. Characters who, once again, you fall in love with, and if you haven't figured out already, I'm a guy who loves a great story with deep, rich characters that are well written and huge backstories. So that's a little bit about my favorite Japanese-made games. If you have your own, I would love to see them listed below in the comments. If you like what you saw here today, please like, comment, and subscribe. I am Unrested.